Hi, everyone. I'm Rosemary Miller here with Maria Gracia Santillana Linares, a reporter here at Forbes, here to tell us about the price movements of Bitcoin in 2023. Thank you so much for joining me today, Maria.
Thank you for having me, Rosemary.
Absolutely. So, Maria, could you elaborate on some of the factors that contributed to the surge of Bitcoin?
Yeah, of course. So there's been a numbers, I think, throughout the year. We really saw kind of the power and the impact on price movements coming from regulatory and policy concerns. If you look at the graph, there's a lot of peaks and troughs where kind of we saw either positive or negative views. And so, on the macroeconomic scale, inflation and rate hikes, Bitcoin has kind of always, reacted regardless of whether the economy is moving. This year, we really saw it kind of be seen as like the flight to safety. So, like a very interesting example of this was when Silicon Valley Bank kind of fell in March. It presents an interesting case study because you really saw the price increase slightly right before the government decided to kind of protect SVB depositors. And then as kind of the market cooled down a little bit, we saw investors, and whether that be cryptocurrency focused investors or just traditional investors, kind of realize the impact that the government has on kind of monetary policy, and the risk that your fiat can be in some of these traditional institutions. Again, we saw a kind of flow to safety, is what we like to call it, into Bitcoin. And then, of course, it was the year of a lot of bad actors. We had the Sam Bankman-Fried trial. We had CZ, the head of Binance, kind of stepped down. And so what's interesting compared to last year, right, we did still see some movements, but the volatility was much less compared to last year. So while FTX, fell in November of 2022 and kind of the market collapsed after that, this year the movements were I would say they were much smaller, which I think to a lot of people kind of points to a little bit of a maturation in the market. We're seeing this idea of bad actors and this idea of big characters priced in already to the current price of Bitcoin.
And so I've been seeing a lot of optimism around the U.S. potentially approving ETFs, exchange traded funds. Could you tell me, like, what's the significance of that potential shift and how might it affect the crypto market?
Oh, absolutely. I honestly think that was one of the biggest movers in terms of the price this year. We saw that every time there was a major announcement, whether that be BlackRock, one of the biggest asset managers in the world, filing their intention to list a Bitcoin spot ETF, to even just news of, these asset managers are meeting with the SEC to determine what the ticker price would be for this ETF, really have an impact on the movement. So one of the biggest kind of price increases we saw was in June when BlackRock filed that first intention. But yeah, I think it's definitely the news of the year. It's something that many people are expecting in Q1 of 2024, and as soon as January 10th is the next deadline as to when the SEC would kind of have to postpone or say that they need more time to review. But definitely, I think it's one of the biggest events and kind of themes that we've seen this year in terms of the price is that every time that there is a significant and usually positive news that'll happen, we kind of move up, and even negative, right? Like we saw in October, I believe, the SEC just missed. So the SEC has been kind of fighting with Grayscale over its ability to transform their Bitcoin trust into a spot ETF. And so that was one of the big court cases that we were tracking over the summer. And in October, the SEC, first a federal court said that the SEC had to review the application, right? And so that was kind of seen as a big win for the industry. We saw Bitcoin's price rally a little bit. But then in October, the SEC had a deadline for an appeal where it could appeal the federal court's decision as to whether it had to or could not look at the application, and it just didn't file an appeal. And that also saw a little price bump in October that we kind of saw move the industry along of like, hey, even no news is good news, right? There's no other further steps kind of preventing an ETF to be passed in the foreseeable future.
So what about the programmed slowdown in supply of Bitcoin? How did that impact the rebound of Bitcoin's price?
Yeah, of course. I think you're talking about the big thing that's kind of scheduled to happen. I believe latest dates put in around March, but we'll say first half of 2024, which just means that it'll get more difficult to produce Bitcoin, and the idea is that the price would go up. So that's certainly something that we're looking at, when it comes to next year, and we're not the only ones. A lot of investors, people both in the crypto space and in traditional finance are expecting, right? depending on when the ETF finally gets approved, it might be two events that really kind of define what Bitcoin's price next year will be, whether they're close together, whether they're further apart, how much it'll increase. But yeah, essentially, right, if you make it more difficult to mine Bitcoin, it means that each Bitcoin is more valuable, and so the price should theoretically go up. There's still a lot of kind of questions and I think speculations as to what that final price will be and like what will the baseline be. But it's something that we're still keeping an eye on. When we think of the first half of 2024, it's something that will definitely define what Bitcoin's year in terms of price will look like.
So, how has the crypto market evolved and in terms of maturity?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that you talk to people in the industry and also a little bit of crypto skeptics too, and it's definitely compared to last year more matured. And I think the biggest evidence to that is just how these bad actor movements are priced in. Right. Again, if we look back to November of 2022, when FTX fell down, crypto decreased. I can't give you the correct amount right now, but over the year it was something like 65%. That's following a year where it hit a peak of $65,000 a coin. For reference, 2023 started at $16,000 a coin, and we're ending around the 41 to 43,000 range. And so again, you see a big variety here. The fact that we've had any kind of price volatility movements following bad actors. So again, Sam Bankman-Fried being convicted, it was still there, right? There was kind of like a reassurance and kind of like a little dip before it went back up. And then I think the biggest one was when CZ kind of, stepped down from Binance as part of a $4 billion settlement with the Treasury and the DOJ. That, again, still volatile. We still saw some movements, but it was definitely in terms of magnitude much less than it would have been in years past. And so I think that is reassuring a lot of investors that, okay, things can happen, right? And we always talk about the U.S. audience, and the U.S. market is very focused on these regulatory actions and these bad actors, while Asian markets sometimes don't react as quickly to that. But I think that's the biggest sign, at least for me, to know that like maybe we're becoming a more mature market. If we're at a complete, you'd have to define what a mature market looks like. As a whole, are we there yet? Is the market perfect? No, there's still movements. In an ideal world, there wouldn't be that many. But it's definitely, I think, we're growing past a little bit of the speculation and the big highs and lows of 2021 and 22 and stabilizing a little while still seeing some growth.
Maria, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.